Hey everyone, my name is Mustafa Salau. I'm a second year student studying mechanical engineering and computer science.
And what's your ancestry?
I'm Nigerian from the Yoruba tribe.
Nigerians, man. All right.
Hi, I'm Kalpitha. I'm a second year nursing student.
All right, Kalpita. And what's your ancestry?
Indian.
Indian. And you lived in Canada for a while, or?
I was born in India, and then I moved to Canada when I was 2, and then I moved to Atlanta when I was 15.
Atlanta when you were 15. Where in Canada?
Toronto.
Toronto. All right, Nico.
Hi, I'm Nico Johns. I'm a first-year accounting student. I plan to go to law school.
So, tell me the story of skin. How do you have these different skin textures? Like, what do you know about skin?
I think there's some scientific basis, so whether it's like exposure to sunlight, different types of work, yeah.
Exposure to sunlight. Okay, awesome. Yep. What do you mean by what do you mean? And one of you can jump in. What do you mean by exposure to sunlight? What does that mean? And think about what I was talking about.
Maybe it has something to do with like what part of the map you're from, and like how the sun hits where you're from.
Okay, dude. Awesome. So remember, people are leaving here, and they're traveling around. They're going places, right? Okay, go forward, right? Remember that. And as they go to different areas of the world, their bodies adapt to different things. So now you're saying, oh yeah, our bodies must adapt to sun. Okay, so what else? Then what happens? What about this guy? How do you get the skin? How'd you get your skin? And how do you get his skin?
I mean, obviously it has something to do with melanin, but like...
What's melanin? Here's a new word. Go ahead.
The pigmentation of your skin.
Okay.
Like what gives it the pigment.
Okay. And what does that do? Can you say as much as you know?
The more melanin you have, the darker you are.
Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Have you heard of melanin before, bro?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So come on, you guys know a lot. Okay, so now go to the next one. The key isn't how do we get from here to here. The key is how do we get from here to here to here, right? So tell us, so what else do you got? Anything else? Go ahead. Nico, you got this, man. You're 18. You got it.
You know, I mean, it doesn't really make sense because if you start like from like as like black and you move on, like I thought you would have to reproduce with a white person to make like a brown person or another white person. So I don't understand like where they just randomly like come from.
Okay, I got you. Perfect, man. So look, at some point in time, as human beings go from Homo erectus to Homo sapiens, we have body hair, and we start losing that body hair. And body hair does a couple things. One, it keeps us warm, which is really important, because it's fur, basically, right? But also, we lose it because, the body needs... it's adaptive, right? The body needs access to more sun, more different, we need access out there, right? So we lose this body hair, but as we lose the body hair, we have a problem because the body hair is a natural protection from UV rays, ultraviolet rays, okay? UVR, we'll say. And the skin cancer, you all heard of skin cancer, right? That's not a new thing. This isn't because, we destroyed the ozone level, over the course of the past 70 years. Skin cancer is part of life. It's part of human life, right? It's rogue cells and okay. So therefore, we need some other way to protect ourselves from the ultraviolet rays of the sun because we don't have this body hair anymore. Okay, so now, one natural protectorant, the body does this amazing thing by producing this enzyme called melanin. And there are different ones, right? But melanin is the dark one. And melanin gives us the most protection from UV. So like ultraviolet rays here, Moose has the most protection just because of the nature of his skin. So if I'm going to be out, spend a lot of time out in the sun, and I don't have hats, I don't have, clothing and hats and, that sort of thing. Because clothing, you got this, right? This is relatively recent. I mean, it's relative to human, Homo sapiens, this whole process. People don't have hats, you don't have baseball hats, you don't have sunscreen, you don't have clothing. And so this guy right here, anybody with his skin pigmentation, he has the most melanin, which is the greatest amount of natural protectorant from UV rays of the sun. So if I'm going to be out in the sun a lot, I'm going to be like, man, I want to look like him. I want his skin, right? If I'm somewhere in between, so we're in this dark area, so this is Moose, and then we start moving away, and we got to Calpita, right? So now we're in this kind of tan, somewhere in between all these areas here, right? And then we get to Nico, and we start going up north, and he gets really white. You need the sun because the sun helps us to synthesize and produce calcium and folic acid and vitamin D. So we need sun. But, he's going to be out in the sun, and he's going to be protected from it, right? And he's got this melanin, so he's going to get a certain amount of folic acid, vitamin D, and calcium, so we got to have that. But this guy right here, he has less melanin, and he has less sun. The further you go north, and the further south is a little bit different, but the further you go north, there's less sun. And so he doesn't have access to that sun in the same way, right? And so he needs to shed his dark skin. So it doesn't have, we're talking tens of thousands of years, you understand here, but he needs to shed the dark skin because the dark skin is going to keep him from synthesizing from these rays synthesizing in his body, so he gets vitamin D, calcium, and folic acid. Okay, this is really important. He needs those things. Without those things, you basically you don't survive, right? So he needs really light skin because he gets so little sun up here that it's really beneficial for him to have light skin. If Moose goes north, it's a whole different story. Right now, today, here you are in State College, where it's pretty dreary and pretty gray. But okay, that's fine. But you're not. It takes thousands of years for this whole process to go, right? It's estimated we can radically change skin tone. We probably did it in about 100 generations, actually. So this is the story. So who has the best skin? Bro, which one has the best skin of these folks right here? No one. Why not?
Each location has its benefits.
Yeah, well, for them now, it's a little bit different, right? So for them, for now, because you can live wherever and you can make up whatever story you want. You can be like, yeah, I have the best skin, and she can say, I have the best skin, and he can say, I have the best skin. But if we go to their ancestors, if they didn't have the skin they had, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have survived. Your ancestors wouldn't have survived. Now they can survive up in the north. And your ancestors wouldn't have survived here. They've all died of skin cancer, where his ancestors were. Right, dude, you got it. Thanks, man. Okay, so that's the story of skin, Moose. When you said, there's a lot of stigma about really dark skin, right? Can you say something about that, or does it am I making that up, or is that real?
No, it's definitely real. I think, I'm not really sure what the stigma is. I think it's just the jokes that might be perceived as funny. Mm-hmm. I remember being a kid, and then when the lights would go out, I'd be like, where's Moose?
Where's Moose? Yeah. Or we see your eyes, we see your teeth.
Yeah.
What else? Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah. But I'm not really sure what the stigma is. It's just the jokes.
Yeah, well, the stigma is, I suppose. Do you guys want to say anything?
I was just going to say it's like a culture thing. I don't know. I guess that's all.
We've always had slavery in the world. We've always had slavery. There's more slavery today than at any point in human history. We have slavery. It's not white people enslaving people, by the way. I mean, a little tiny bit, but mostly it's not. But what we saw with the European chattel slavery was really large. It's not people have enslaved people for a lot of reasons, okay? One, mostly cultures. So people who look like you enslaved other people who look like you. People who look like you enslaved other people who look like you, and people who look like him enslaved people who look like him. Europeans they had lots of slaves, okay? The reason is because you didn't enslave people on the other side of the world. You enslaved people who were right next to you, and you didn't like them for some reason. Maybe they spoke a different language, maybe they had a different culture, maybe this, maybe that, but whatever. Those are the people you enslaved. So you know what I mean? So the Italians, what would be the Turks and the Greeks, and right? Okay, so But what we have in this, the slave system that we call chattel slavery, we see in the West, in Europe and the U.S., was the first time in a systematic way, in a big way, people creating an ideology around slavery based fundamentally on biology and where people were from. And what they did was they said, because you got to justify this. It's not because Europeans were the most evil or the most violent or anything like that. It just happened that way, okay? And they created this system in which in order to create this slave system that they needed, because they needed labor in the new world, right? You have to have a rationalization, and the rationalization was that people who looked like him were inferior to people who looked like me or Nico, okay? And so you got to have an ideology of that, because you can enslave somebody on the base. You can enslave someone on the basis of they're my enemy. They live in the next valley over, and so we go to war with them, and then we take prisoners, and they become our slaves. You can do that because you hate them. But no one hated Africans. They were just a convenient people. Then we had to create an ideology that people who look like you were inferior, and then everything becomes based on that. And so that's the origin of the skin piece, right? And then it's like, okay. And that's I think part of that, like the stigma, the whatever. Like you people of African ancestry, just in this part of the world, right? Because India, you got your own thing going on over there, which we'll talk about, like the different ways in which you battle each other. But like it's just something we've been dealing with forever. Okay, that's the story. That's a quick version of the story.